Google has fired its first shots in the next operating system war. We talked to a couple experts about Chrome OS, Molly Wood and Kimberly Bradford.
Save time and money by skipping business trips and using GoToMeeting. Visit gotomeeting.com/techpodcast and get 30 days for free.
Google has finally pulled back the curtain on Chrome OS, its new desktop and notebook operating system, not to be confused, of course, with their other operating system, Android, which is targeted mainly towards handsets and cell phones. Molly, what's your first take on Chrome OS as an operating system? I mean, it seems very web-targeted, just like they had promised. Do you have any hesitations? Are you kind of excited? What's your kind of general temperature of Chrome OS?
I think at this point, my temperature is probably lukewarm. I'm definitely interested, and I feel like I finally now understand what the difference is between Chrome OS and Android. And I find it kind of interesting that Android is almost like an old school desktop operating system that has apps, and then Chrome is going to be this completely thin client web thing. I think that my overall impression is that it's very cool. I think it's something that, interestingly, Microsoft has been talking about for a long time, about wanting to implement. It may prove right out of the gate to be a little ahead of its time.
Yeah. Now, this is specifically targeted for netbooks, and you're the news editor over at Laptop. How do you kind of see this as fitting into the netbook space, where there's already other things like Jolly Cloud, and of course Windows 7/XP, kind of the king of the netbook game? Do you imagine Chrome OS fitting in pretty well, or what's your kind of take?
I think it's going to depend on what the hardware looks like. I know they talked a little bit yesterday about having very specific hardware requirements, so that's going to come into play. But I think that netbook owners might really take to this operating system because, as they pointed out, a lot of people just spend a lot of time on the internet, and if they can find web apps that act and look and feel the same way as their regular apps, then they might be really happy to just be able to put everything out there on the cloud. So I think it could be exciting for netbooks. It might be even more exciting for smart books. Make those seem more like a grown-up category than they sort of appear right now.
Yeah. Let's kind of define Chrome OS for a second too. So the demo that they showed, it looks a lot like the desktop version of Chrome, just with a little bit of tweaks. I don't know, Molly, for people who might not understand the basics of Chrome OS, sort of what's the difference between Chrome OS, in your mind, the Chrome browser, and sort of a regular operating system in general?
Well, it's interesting because it basically is the Chrome browser to a certain extent. I mean, when you load, so to speak, the operating system on one of these netbooks, these Google, and by the way, you will have to buy, as Kimberly kind of alluded to, Google-specific hardware. When you load up this OS, what you're essentially going to see is a browser interface. Every tab is going to be an application. You'll have kind of a dock, it sounds like, on the left side that will be a little bit like your start menu or your taskbar. So it'll definitely be a different experience than people are used to. And I think that it's almost a little disorienting to look at it because it's so much like a browser, and yet it's this operating system with applications running, and each tab is a different process. I mean, I think it's something people could get used to, but like I say, they're going to have to be a little bit adventurous to want to go there in the first place.
When netbooks first launched, there was a lot of problems with people returning them because they had these low-impact operating systems based on Linux on there, and they said, I don't really get what this is. This isn't my Windows desktop. It looks like a netbook. It should run like a notebook. I mean, Kimberly, do you think consumers will be a little bit confused because of that?
They might be a little bit. I think that one of the problems that I think happened with Linux on netbooks is that a lot of the Linux that came loaded on them didn't look like Windows. They were all these very, carefully put together UIs with big icons and trying to make Linux more friendly to people. But what it ended up doing is making Linux seem just very alien and strange. If you go with, say Ubuntu or Linux Mint, and you look at their just general UIs, they look like Windows. And so that, I think, probably had a little bit to do with it. With Chrome OS, that familiarity may be in Google's favor. It looks like the Chrome browser. People might be comfortable with that. And because those tabs still work kind of like a taskbar, that also might make people just feel more comfortable in using it, figuring it out.
Definitely be interesting to see. I'm really looking forward to see where all this plays out. Of course, Microsoft stands the most to lose in this. If netbook manufacturers and low-cost computer manufacturers, for that matter, start favoring Chrome OS over Windows, I mean, that's going to be a real big issue for them. We'll have to see where that goes. Guys, we're going to leave it there. Molly Wood, the executive editor, one of the executive editors from CNET.com. Thanks for coming on the program. Really appreciate it. Also, Kimberly Bradford, who's a news editor at Laptop. Thanks for being on the show as well.
Thank you.
I'm Randall Bennett. Don't forget, you can catch us on iTunes. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere, so try and catch us somewhere. See ya.
This show brought to you by GoDaddy.com. Use promo code TVI5 and get 10% off any order.